to be out here. Thank you. And then I'm gonna. And I want to introduce Ofelia Zuniga. She is also with Celebration Nation and helps with so many factors. And of course, Gina Zapanta, lawyer and CEO of DA Lawyers. And I'm going to let her take it from here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Flor. Okay, everyone, by the way, if anyone walks in, let them know there's seats up here too on the stage. They don't have to talk, they just can sit up here with us. So, okay, thank you, Flor, Ofelia. Appreciate you for organizing not only this event, but for showing up for our communities always, because your work has gone far beyond just what's happening right now. So, I want to start today with everyone acknowledging that there's a lot of stress and fear in this room and beyond. So we're going to start with a deep breath, because we cannot be effective allies, strong people in our community, being there for our friends and family without being okay ourselves. So we're going to do a collective deep breath. All of us, okay, ready? Uno, dos, tres. We're going to do it one more time, and this time I want to hear the exhale. We're going to push out the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the worry, all of it. Push it out, and I want to hear it loud. I promise you this will work. Uno, dos, tres. See? Okay, now we can start. All right, but truly, don't dismiss the breath, because as we're talking about a lot of important things today, and we will continue to, but take care of yourselves first. That mental health, you cannot dismiss it. This is a marathon. This is nothing we're going to solve overnight. You take your breath, you power down, you stop doom scrolling. Seeing one more story is not going to change anything. You can change things, though, by showing up but being okay, because you breaking down serves nobody. Okay? Got it. All right. So, I'm Gina Zapanta from ZA Lawyers, and I'm here with a panel of lawyers who are aligned and are showing up today because we know how important it is for all of us to know our rights, especially with what's going on. And so today we're going to give you some scenarios of what we have heard are common questions we're all getting. So I'm going to introduce everyone quickly, and then we'll get started. So Mike Alder of Alder Law, who's also my husband. So and Mike does personal injury, employment problems. We do workers' comp and wage and hours, which is like you're not getting paid right on time. And then we have Christian Contreras. Christian is our civil rights hero. Christian is, and you've probably seen him on the news a lot, he is out there fighting the good fight for civil rights. So I think it's very important to hear from him. And then we have Ms. Delia Franco from Franco Law. Immigration specialist, so, you know, we need to talk to her. And then we have Ms. Jacqueline Davalos, criminal defense. So we're all Latino lawyers, even Mike, he's an honorary. And, you know, I think it's important on optics also to show you that we're here. We have been here, and we are on the front lines with you, and we can educate. So let's get started. A common question a lot of people have been asking us is, what happens if ICE shows up at my job or comes knocking at my door, right? Everyone has been asking, we've been seeing the videos. So let's just go down, and the lawyers from their different specialties can tell you what they think you should do. Let's start with Christian.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. So I want to start with talking about civil rights. That is my specialty, that is my practice area. And I want to start by saying that no matter your walk of life, no matter your status, and no matter any type of background characteristic that you have, we all have civil rights, including folks who are undocumented, including folks who are not Spanish speakers. And so the main civil rights that we discuss in this context are stemming from the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and Sixth Amendment. But a very important thing to recognize, particularly in this state, is that our rights aren't limited in terms of the federal rights that we have. We have a California Constitution, we have a California legislature, and with that comes a different set of rights that we all need to be familiar with. But I want to get back to the scenario, which is a common scenario that many folks here actually are familiar with. And I just want to get a quick survey. By a show of hands, how many here are an ally of undocumented folks? Yeah. All right, well, give yourself a round of applause. Yeah. That is amazing. That is, I feel at home right now. I feel protected right now, and I feel safe because even me, in my position, there's uncertainty, there's fear. But I think when we come together collectively and empower ourselves and our communities, then we'll be much stronger. And so this scenario about, well, if they come to the door, I think that's, most of us here, given that we're allies, we know the main rights. We have the right to remain silent, that is from the Fifth Amendment, self-incrimination. We have a right from unreasonable searches and seizures stemming from the Fourth Amendment, which provides that the government can't just come into your home. Your home is your castle, the castle doctrine, and they cannot come into your home without a warrant. We've heard about the scenario about we need to see the warrant slided under the door, but it's very important to stand your ground respectfully. And I want to emphasize respectfully because on my TikTok algorithm, I have the First Amendment auditors, the guys who are always mouthing off to the police and saying, F you, F this, and you have a right to do that, but just because you have that right doesn't mean it's going to be the most effective thing to do, right? And so I always say, yes, you have a right, freedom of speech, you have a right against self-incrimination, but at the same time, de-escalate the situation. Do not escalate the situation by saying F off, you mother effer. And so I think it's important to also equip folks to understand how to react in a situation calmly and also not escalate by making the person on the other side of the door mad or emotionally riled up. And so those are the main tips, of course. I think most of us here are familiar with making sure that you don't give consent. Consent is a big one. If you authorize law enforcement to search you, search your home, when they ask, can I come in? And you say yes, that's consent. That is consent. So it's important to equip folks to say, hey, you're not allowed in here, you don't have my consent, and you're not going to come in. Frankly, a practice tip for me is don't say anything. Don't say anything. I mean, if someone's knocking at the door, I would be quiet. And how do they know you're in there? Seriously. That's what I would do if it were me. I would, shh, everyone, quiet. Don't say anything. I mean, I don't think they're going to barge in, but if they do, they need a warrant, right? And you have to make sure that that warrant is a proper one. And another thing to recognize is law enforcement is allowed to lie. They're allowed to deceive you. And they're allowed to make things up. And so you have to scrutinize, you have to be very cautious about what information they're telling you and ensure that it's accurate, verified. In fact, now things are transmitted so quickly. Take a picture of whatever documents they have, send it to a trusted source. Post it on social media. Say, hey, is this right, everyone? And then maybe it will go viral, and then a bunch of lawyers will chime in and say, no, it's not. And so those are my general tips from the civil rights perspective.
For having me here, and thanks everybody for showing up for your community. I really appreciate it. So she started with a really good question. What should you do if ICE shows up? I'm a big believer in preparation. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do I prepare myself, my family, my community. I'll be closer. There we go. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay, so you know how we all have carnes asadas and parties and quinceañeras, and all you really have to tell your family and friends and community is what time they show up and what day it is, and then everybody's there. Well, I want you to have something similar. but this is going to be a meeting about preparation. So you're gonna pick a day with your family, and it's gonna be on a Saturday, whatever the case may be, at 7 p.m., and everybody needs to be there, including the kids. This is hard to hear, but I much better prefer, if I had children, my children to hear it than to see it in front of eyes, if it happens to them. So that's the first thing, you have this meeting, and I'm gonna go through several points. I hope I don't take too much time, but I think these are very important. So the first thing that you're gonna do in this meeting, after scheduling and making sure that it's mandatory for everybody to attend, because we don't want surprises later, then you're going to, as a family, pick 2 people. Okay, let's call them Victoria and Victor. Okay, these people are either lawful permanent residents or preferably United States citizens. They're able to speak, they're able to move, they're drivers. They have a certain attitude about getting things done. You're gonna pick those people from your family, and if you get detained or somebody gets detained in your family, that is who you're gonna call. And they're gonna have certain instructions to act. The first one is gonna be to find a lawyer. So this is another prep work. Find a good immigration lawyer. This is very important. Not only 1, but 2. A lot of people say, Ms. Franco, are you gonna be available? We have a small office. What if I'm helping 2 to 3 clients and I'm not available? So you find more than 1, and you find a good one, because there's a lot of bad immigration attorneys out there. So you make sure that you figure out that they're a lawyer, that you figure out their specialty is immigration, and that they do detain cases. Okay, and you do this before you get detained. Don't do your research until you get detained, because you're gonna find a bad one and they're gonna charge you a lot of money, okay? So after that, you are going to talk about money. Money is really important. Money moves things. So we have to obviously start saving. Why do we need money? We need money to hire a lawyer. We need money because we need to bond people out. And we need money because if the main breadwinner is not there, how about the mortgage, the rent, feeding the kids? So you need to think about these things before they happen. Okay, now briefly let's talk about fianzas, bonds. So I'm just gonna briefly tell you what it looks like. So if somebody is detained and they're eligible for bond, because not everybody is eligible for bond. This is a bit of a complicated question, and unfortunately, just recently, the Lakey Act just got passed a couple days ago, and it expanded what is called mandatory detention. Some people are not going to be eligible, and if you want to know if you are eligible or not, speak to an immigration lawyer now, so you don't have that surprise. But if that person is eligible, so there's 2 layers. The very first one is going to be before ICE, the immigration police. And they are going to determine whether or not they want to even give you a bond. It could be on your own recognizance, free, or it's going to cost you some money. And it's going to be determined. Usually it's about $1,500 minimum. If that doesn't work and you get denied bond via ICE and you're still eligible for bond, you can request it before an immigration judge. That's called a bond redetermination hearing. And there, again, it's a minimum of $1,500, but lately I haven't seen anything under $5,000. So it's probably gonna be at least $5,000. Okay, so money is something that we're all gonna have to talk about. And this is also extremely important. Unfortunately, does everybody know what expedited removal is? Okay, if you don't, you need to look it up. We don't have enough time to teach you everything, but this particular law, unfortunately, it became law during a Democratic president at the end of the 90s, the Clinton administration. It used to be the case that if you were coming into the border, the Customs and Border Patrol were able to issue orders of removal as if they were judges, okay? Unfortunately, just a few days ago, this got expanded to the entire country. So someone who has been in the country for less than 2 years, or people that cannot prove that they've been here more than 2 years, can be removed without a hearing, can be given an expedited removal order, okay? So what does this mean? It means that we need to gather documentation. So that family meeting, you are going to tell everybody, where are your documents? Give them to me now. And we really only need copies, but you can't be figuring this out when you have an emergency. And what documents am I talking about? I'm talking about birth certificates, IDs, certificates of marriage, and also proof that you've been in the country at least 2 years. You want more, obviously, so about 3 years. Maybe 1 or 2 documents that indicate the name, the date, and the address that you've been here. Okay, so these documents, I would prefer that you carry them with you, if possible. And again, not necessarily you, but allies, you tell this to your communities. And then children. I'm not a family law lawyer, but if these people have children, they need to talk to a family law lawyer for powers of attorneys, for guardianship. And then Victor and Victoria, they need to be listed in the schools so that they can pick up the kids, so they don't get stuck. Or just have to be there waiting a long time until the school figures it out. And at the end, just ask the very difficult questions as a family. What happens if you do get detained? What do you want us to do? Are we gonna fight a case? Do we have enough money to even fight a case? What if we do have to leave? What is that gonna look like? I know it's very difficult to have these conversations, but you wanna have them together as opposed to figuring it out on the spot, okay? So that's it for me, but we'll continue the conversation. Here you go.
Just quickly wanted to add that, so there's a family code. That's essentially the code which governs family law and so forth. And there's also judicial council forms. Some of you folks may be familiar with some of these forms that the Judicial Council has issued, which are legal documents. So under the family code, there's a section which authorizes caregiver to talk about medical care and also schooling related issues. So to Delia's point, there's a form, a 2-page form. It's from the Judicial Council, which you could fill out just to have that ready in case some family member is no longer in the care of, or a child rather is no longer in the care of a family member who is detained. So documents like that are readily available through the Judicial Council website.
Can I say one thing before we go? So, questions about lawyers and money and how do you find a lawyer? So, we have recently created a Justice and Equity Alliance, and we've done it on social media, and there's a QR code outside for lawyers in particular around the country who are now volunteering as part of this alliance to at least help you get to that first level of information. And so for lawyers here, you don't have to be an immigration lawyer to know some of these things we've all been taught, right? So lawyers in particular, we're hoping that you will help volunteer so that when these calls come in and you're saying find a good lawyer, that we actually have at least caring lawyers that will help. And so for any lawyers, I see Martha right there. Yeah, and then people, if you look at the QR code, you can share that information with family members or with the main people to help find a good lawyer, okay?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Davalos. I'm a criminal defense attorney. And a lot of what I have to say as far as your rights overlaps with what Christian told you about the Fourth Amendment right. And as we know, it doesn't matter if you have a criminal record. I know that's the excuse that they gave, but they're really just rounding up everybody. But from my perspective of criminal defense, I know that the criminal defense attorneys are now expecting ICE to show up to criminal courthouses. So, I mean, that would, if they actually did care about rounding up the criminals, but we do expect them to at some point drop in some criminal courthouses. So the advice that I have for people, or for the people that are undocumented and have criminal cases, would be to contact your attorney to see if they could appear for you. I don't know how long really the federal government can keep up all these resources, because it sounds like they called off the DEA all the federal agencies to stop doing their work to come help ICE and Border Patrol. So we don't know how long this is gonna last, and hopefully it's just in the beginning, because it was something, shock and awe that he could show that I'm doing something. But in the meantime, like for the people that have the luxury to stay out of crowded places, out of Northgate Market, out of places where our people congregate, and courthouses is one of them. And what I see in criminal courthouses is, one person has a case and there goes grandma and tío y tía and the babies and great grandma. And we don't need to be doing that. People need to stay home. Of course, if you're safe and you have your documents, great. But a lot of the stuff that we're advising you now is for you to preserve your rights, because we can't stop the agents from doing illegal things, right? They're being given illegal orders and they're carrying out illegal things. Like, we can't stop them from doing that. But what we're here to tell you is, how do you preserve your rights so that after this guy is gone and we can go back to the rule of law, those rights are preserved, okay? And if somebody does get deported, but they did everything correctly, they could at least fight it. If they qualify, apply for immigration relief. And so one of the main things is, if people have a criminal case, they're undocumented, contact the attorney to see, can you just appear for me 977? I'm trying to avoid going out in public, and they'll understand. The public defender's offices right now and private criminal defense attorneys, we're already, our head's already there. We already know, okay, I just want to avoid my client having to leave the house or going to a place where they can be picked up. I've had in the past, I mean, this was years and years ago, I've had a client who was waiting for his preliminary hearing, and he got picked up, and I didn't know. I was out of the courtroom, and I was like, where'd he go? And the bailiff was like, well, there's 2 agents here, and I'm like, what? I mean, they don't care. They don't care if you're gonna warrant on your criminal case. They don't care. So contact the attorneys to see if they can appear for you. And I know a lot of Spanish speakers are just like, I don't know, like, es un abogado de oficio, like, it's a public defender. I don't know who my attorney is. Okay, so if you guys as allies are gonna help them, it's like, okay, what courthouse is your case at? Where do you drive to go to court? Okay, so you look up that courthouse and the public defender's office in that courthouse, you call them, and then, give name, date of birth, okay, you're a client, and that's how you connect them to their attorney. Because a lot of times they don't know. They're like, I don't know who my attorney is. It's a different person every time. Well, it doesn't matter, because it's that office that represents you. So they're gonna be able to look you up and get your request to the right person. That's one. Number 2, there's a law now, and a lot of people who either are not documented or are residents, but they're still worried and they want to become naturalized U.S. citizens, and they have, let's say, a conviction, a past conviction on their record, that they're like, I haven't applied for my citizenship, or I haven't even applied for my residency, even though I have a qualifying relative, because of this drug conviction that I had 20 years ago. Well, California law now allows you to vacate that conviction. You can go to an attorney. I do a lot of these, but they could also call the public defender's office and say, hey, I have this, can you guys help me? If they can't help you, they can send you to, give you another number for the conflict panel, so that you don't have to hire a private attorney to do it. And so always check to see if you can get it done for free first. And if you were a public defender client, usually you will qualify to get it done for free. Or that could be vacated, okay? Even a drug conviction where, and Delia can speak to this as well, but even people think, oh, I had a drug conviction 20 years ago, pero ya lo pagué. Like, I did everything, and I got diversion, and it got dismissed. Well, the federal government doesn't recognize that it got dismissed in criminal court. When you pled to go to diversion, that's it. Like, for the federal government and ICE, that's it. Like, you are convicted. So it'd be good, I mean, this is like I said, we're trying to preserve your rights. because we can't stop them from doing what they're gonna do. But if you just get ahead of the curve and you're like, okay, well, I got this conviction vacated, like, that's the only thing they'll recognize, is vacating it, not an expungement, okay? When they say, oh, tengo que limpiar mi record, it's not an expungement, and they don't know. Sometimes they'll pay an attorney for an expungement, and then they're like, go back to the immigration attorney. The immigration attorney's like, no, now you gotta go pay another attorney, because you need to get it vacated, okay? But that puts you in the position of at least starting your process to start getting your immigration papers in. Because again, if you are picked up, or somebody you love is picked up and deported, if you get those things taken care of, like, you're already trying to preserve your rights and getting the ball rolling so that you can come back legally or however you want, but at least to be able to eventually apply for immigration relief and be in a safe place.
Just a few follow-ups. Thank you for that. So she said 977. So 977 is a provision in the penal code which allows folks for their attorney to appear for them in misdemeanor cases and in certain circumstances for felony cases. So if you or someone you know is facing a criminal case and it's a public defender, some of you may think, oh, the public defender is not on my side. I think a lot of public defenders are good, just depends. You have to be honest with them. You have to be transparent with them and say, look, this is my circumstance, and let them know that because of what's going on, I would like for you to ask the judge or for you to appear 977 on my behalf so I don't have to keep going to all these court hearings.
All right, thank you. And I know we've thrown a lot of words at you, so don't feel it's a lot. We went to law school, so they're like, oh, 977, expungement. It's okay, we're gonna explain that, but and what I'd love to do is open this up to questions, because we're here to answer your questions. I just wanted to start high level. So, any questions? Oh, okay, I knew it. Okay, I'm just gonna walk around. Okay, first, let's just start down here.
I would like to ask about LGBTQ, specifically with immigration. It is hard to get an immigration lawyer, and most importantly, it's most hard to get for an LGBTQ representative. So how do we go about it and finding an LGBTQ immigration lawyer?
Well, do you want to talk to
Testing.
I don't
This
think,
one works.
does it work? Okay. So I don't think, at least that I have heard, immigration lawyers that specifically work with the LGBT community, but a lot of immigrations help the LGBT community. We're one of them. I'm definitely one of them. We have a number of different cases at the office that deal with the type of different relief. So it can be, for example, U visas, victims of crime. It could be through a family member, same-sex marriage still goes. So please, please, if you're able to get married to a United States citizen, able to obtain your residency, please do so now, because right now we still have that. But yes, I think if you call an office and you ask them, I think they would probably be transparent and tell you whether they work with the LGBT community. I personally don't know any immigration a lawyer or office that doesn't, but I do live in a bubble, and all my friends would never work, would never shy away from that at all. Quite the opposite. We embrace them.
most lawyers don't care. If you're a citizen or not citizen, come talk to them. They don't, most lawyers that we know, I've never actually ever heard anybody say, well, what's your preference? It doesn't matter. We're here to advocate. Next question. Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between vacating a conviction versus expungement?
Yes, thank you for that. So when people get an expungement, it basically hides your convictions from private companies, right? If you're applying to a private company and they're going to do a background check and you don't want this conviction to affect you, you'll get it expunged. But when you expunge something, everybody in government can always see it. A police officer who pulls you over can see it. A district attorney can see it. Of course, the federal government can see it. So because they will always be able to see exactly what's on your record, and you can't hide anything from them, you have to vacate. So the vacating, the law that allows us to vacate, and it's a California law, basically is if you were not a citizen, so even if you were a resident of the United States, and when you entered your plea of guilty or no contest, you did not understand the immigration consequences that you would have, and then fast forward, you now have immigration consequences, and immigration consequences can be as much as I consulted with an immigration attorney and they told me that I don't qualify because of this drug conviction. And that's it. That's literally all it takes. You don't have to be in removal proceedings. It doesn't have to get that far. So once we do that, it's basically a motion to the court where we show the client's ties to the United States, you know, their kids being born here, them being married here, all their jobs, to show that, like, this person was tied to the United States. Had they known that this conviction would have made them deportable and not be able to naturalize eventually, they would have never pled. And it's a pretty low bar. So most of the ones, all the ones I've done have been granted because it's not that much of a burden that we have to show. I mean, as long as you have that, it'll be granted. There is a catch. The catch is when it's granted, the case basically goes back to before the person pled. So if it's granted, then they look at the district attorney, what do you want to do with this case? If it's a serious case, then they're going to be like, well, we're just going to re-prosecute. Like, yeah, this keeps going. But what I see mostly in our community, what affects them is I see the simple drug possession cases that they did diversion for, or misdemeanor domestic violence that they pled them to domestic violence with injury as opposed to just domestic battery, which is in most cases immigration safe. So a lot of times, even if they want to re-prosecute, then the attorney can just be like, okay, you want to re-prosecute, you want a conviction, fine. Like, will you take this? And we'll negotiate a charge that, like, you want to charge, fine. But something that's not going to affect them for immigration. And then they have that path. Like, you throw them the bone, and then the client gets to be able to apply and naturalize or get their residency.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
How does a completed restraining order come into effect with something like this?
One more time?
A completed restraining order, how does that come into effect?
On an undocumented person's like history.
Will the restraining order affect their ability to apply for immigration relief? A civil restraining order.
It will not affect you if you have it, if you simply have one and you have not violated it. But if you violate it and then you're charged and convicted for a different offense, that's when we have a problem. But the existence of a restraining order, as long as you respect it, should be fine.
Thank you.
Sorry, so to piggyback on that other question regarding vacated and expungement, is there a difference between sealing and vacated?
Sealing. Yes. So sealing, again, it's still there, right? So sometimes, like, I've had clients where they're in a different state and they're like, this is still showing up on my DOJ that my immigration attorney had me do. They had me do my fingerprints and this is showing up. And then I go to the courthouse and they're like, no, this is sealed. We can't show it to you. We need a release. So it's sealed. The vacating is basically, it was constitutional error, that conviction was executed, so it needs to be undone based on the constitutional error, because they didn't understand the rights they were giving up at the time, and that's literally the only thing that the feds will recognize. And so, and because they can see everything, even if they see that, they're just like, okay.
Thank you.
I want to add something really quickly to vacatures. So you definitely want to do vacatures as opposed to sealing, as opposed to expungement. I think that's clear. My recommendation is if you do have a record, go visit an immigration attorney first. Why? I've been litigating immigration for over 18 years. Some vacatures work and some don't. Okay, so it depends on the underlying reasons why, and it depends on the relief that you're applying. So I would prefer, I know it sounds like I've got to visit this lawyer and this lawyer, but if we're gonna do it right, and you don't wanna waste money, go visit a lawyer, try to figure out what you really need and whether you're eligible for relief as well. And that way you can do the correct vacatur depending on the relief that is available to you.
So yes, adding to that, so when people come to me and they're like, I need to clean my record, the first thing I ask them is, did you already talk to an immigration attorney? Like, if this person has 20 convictions, I'm not just gonna charge them to vacate each conviction. I'm like, you might not even need any of these touched, right? Or if there's no way, even if you had no convictions, if you didn't qualify for immigration relief, then why are you trying to pay me for? Like, so the first step is always, yes, if they haven't talked to an immigration attorney, I always say, go talk to an immigration attorney, and then once they tell you, yes, you qualify, but these are holding you back, and these are the 2 convictions that are holding you back, I'm like, then call me.
Great, thank you. Next.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm an ethnic studies history teacher in Santa Ana Unified. And my question was, in general, how do I support my students? About half of my students are newcomers. But in addition to that, I think it's important to empower students to mobilize. A lot of my students have wanted to show their support, whether it was through a march or even just putting up posters and know your rights. But because ethnic studies has been under attack, how can I do that and still, be protected and protect my students as well?
I'm gonna say something that's really important. Are your kids under 21? Okay, this is great. Okay, I love this question. Why? There's a type of relief available called SIGIS, Special Immigrant Juvenile Status, and these are for people under 21, a lot of them children, that have been neglected, abused, or abandoned. Thank you. Neglected, abused, or abandoned by one or both parents. Okay, this is a wonderful type of relief because the likelihood of success is very high. And usually, first we have to obtain a guardianship order, then we obtain a SIGIS order by a family or probate court. Then we can go with that order, go to USCIS, obtain a petition, get that approved, get the kid an employment authorization document, and a social security, and then eventually they're going to be able to get their green card. So that is where we have a solution, and a lot, it's gonna take a while. Unfortunately, SIGIS does take a while, but they'll get a work permit. So that would be my immediate way to try. Of course, I think you wanted to know how do I help them on a day-to-day, but I'm getting to the heart of the problem, and let's legalize them if we can. So that's my 2 cents.
Christian, can you talk to that? Because we haven't touched on the protesting. I think it ties into people want to do something, we want to mobilize. Let's talk civil rights.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is recognizing that many people here that are sitting here, you're the pillar of your community, you're the pillar of your family unit, and even your social network. So it's very important that you protect your family and your friends are protecting yourself by ensuring that you're not in some sort of situation which will then take you away from your community, from your family. I was involved in a case, some of you may know the case, the Justice 8 case. That's the case of Eden Enamorado and several other protesters who were prosecuted for a conspiracy. And it's a ridiculous case. It's an absolute ridiculous case with very real consequences. And what happened in that case is that the government, the DA's office said, oh, well, you folks were in this group chat talking about going to a protest, and at that protest, a fight occurred, and then you went to another protest, and then another protest, and so everyone who was in this group chat, in this alleged conspiracy, then was prosecuted for 17 felonies. And so I know we're very passionate about what we do. We're very dedicated about what we do and very emotional. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that when we're protesting, when we're organizing, and when we're exercising our First Amendment rights, that we do it in a way that prevents us from then being taken down. And so when you see violence at a protest, or when you see someone antagonizing at a protest, you have to make sure that that is stopped. You have to stop that from happening. And if you see someone who is spreading violence within these communications or something illegal, make sure you either remove that person from the communications or you remove yourself. Because then you could get in trouble subsequently. Because I fear that the federal government is going to start prosecuting First Amendment protesters, the organizers. And any little ounce, any little piece that you give them, they're going to come after us because they know we're the leaders. They know that if you get the head of the organization, then the movement falls apart. So it's important that you protect yourselves and that you recognize that you can get into trouble if you are in certain spaces that could be categorized as conspiracies.
Thank you. Next question.
It's a two-part question, if I can say it right. I guess the first part is, what can we do to support the community that is not close to us, our family? If we are in public and we see eyes trying to violate their rights, I haven't encountered that, but during the other protests, I've encountered police, using excessive force, and if you get too close to them, then they threaten that they're gonna arrest you. Like, what is the safety as far as keeping us safe? And then the second part is, as naturalized citizens, it's been made very clear that our citizenship could get taken away if we get accused of something. Could our participation in groups trying to share Know Your Rights and other anti-ICE movements put us at risk of losing our citizenship?
I could address the first part. That's another scenario which could also get you in trouble in terms of maybe getting involved in a situation where a law enforcement officer is carrying out their duties. So there's a crime called lynching, where essentially you're intervening in a law enforcement officer's duties. And I've had some cases like that where it was a protest, and then the officer tries to arrest someone, and then a friend tries to intervene. That could maybe subject you to arrest. And so I get it. If it was my friend, my family member, I would want to help them and defend them. But unfortunately, that's one of the scenarios which could get you in trouble. And so it's just important to document and to record, and then to maybe thereafter try to intervene through the legal process.
This is still part of the first question. So there's a California law that just came out a few years ago that allows you to record police and law enforcement interactions, right? As long as you're not interfering. So if you're recording and they're telling you to back up, back up, back up. Show yourself backing up on the camera. But they cannot arrest you, at least under California law, they cannot arrest you simply for recording it. So I think that's an important thing that you could do to preserve that evidence for that person. If you see it happening, you are the witness and you are trying to catch it on video. That's one of the most helpful things that you could do. I've also seen, people just yelling things like, don't talk, don't sign anything, don't sign, and this, she's gonna be able to talk, don't sign your voluntary deportation, right? That person who is getting arrested might not have come to one of these talks and they don't know. So you could record, and you're allowed to yell. I mean, you know, you can communicate. They can't stop you from that, so. And I'll answer your second question, and I'm glad that you brought it up because it's part of the fear mongering. They want us to be afraid. They want naturalized citizens or people that were born in another country that had their green card and now are naturalized to be afraid. And what is the weapon that we have? Education. So you should not be afraid, okay? Why? Because a person that is a naturalized citizen cannot be taken their naturalization citizenship away unless they obtained it by fraud. That is the only exception under the law right now. You probably heard about birthright citizenship. Yes, that was an executive order last Monday, but it's been stopped temporarily by a judge, and we'll see what happens then. Usually laws are not retroactive, so people that are currently naturalized citizens, you should be fine. If in the future, which I doubt it'll survive constitutional muster, but in the future, let's say it's successful, that means that children that are born either from someone who is undocumented or someone who's here temporarily, such as a tourist visa or a student visa, they're not going to be able to automatically obtain citizenship. Okay, so that is still to be determined. That is not the law. There's an executive order, and that the executive order has been stopped, and the courts will determine what's going to happen to that. But current citizens, current naturalized citizens, unless you didn't obtain it by fraud, you should be fine. But thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm 21 years old and I have a temporary study visa until 2026. And well, personally, after this 2026, I still have the option to renew my visa for another 2 years, but economically, my single mother and I, we cannot afford another 2 years. So that's gonna be good for me. So I have two questions. The first one is for people with temporary visas that are gonna expire in these closest years in this period, which are the options that we have? And my second question is, if currently the US country is taking away some citizenship for some people that currently they are legally being here, is it possible that in maybe next years they're gonna start neglecting visas or legal permits or whatever to Latino communities or people who are trying to immigrate? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The first one is very specific. I don't have general recommendations because your visas are very specific as to whether you can renew, whether you can extend. So I would recommend that you schedule a consultation, because usually what we do is we ask a number of different questions about your history, arrests, detentions, etc. And based on your answers is that we can determine what the advice would be. So that would be for your first question. And then for the second question, I think you mean that they're detaining even US citizens, right? Well, they have resources. So those United States citizens that are unlawfully being detained, they should speak to my friend over here about how their rights are being violated. But I don't know if that has anything to do with the temporary visa's future. That's to be determined. As of now, we haven't heard anything, but definitely keep abreast of the news and visit an immigration lawyer to answer your specific first question.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. I have two questions as well. Firstly, what's the difference between an invalid versus a valid warrant from an ICE official? And then what would the steps be if they do have a valid warrant and they're coming to your door, your workplace, etc.?
So I can talk about an immigration warrant. An immigration warrant is usually a document that has a specific name and address of someone that ICE is looking for. So that's one. But we also have home warrants. We'll talk about those.
Again, the Fourth Amendment with respect to being free from unreasonable searches and seizures, there is a warrant to enter a home, but that warrant has to particularly state the address and that specific home. And of course, that has to be signed. That's one of the big ones as well, that These documents have to be signed by a judge, and again, you have to make sure that it's valid. And so that's one of my tips that I offered previously. Maybe take a picture of it if you are able to see it, and you should demand it, and then have other people, other folks look at it and to determine whether it's an actual warrant or not.
Great. Hi, I'm wondering if in the big family meeting where you're gathering your documents to prove that you're gonna be here, or you've been here for the past 2 years, would school records be sufficient? Or would that be jeopardizing anything for children?
No, I would include them, definitely. Any official documents from the medical, from the doctor's office, from school, your bills, your home mortgage, your rental agreements, your rental receipts, all of those would work. And I would not just get one type of document, I would get several for maybe each month or something like that.
Thank you.
Hello. Teacher question again. I teach at 2 Cal States, and there's this talk about ICE maybe showing up at schools. There are these rights to prevent ICE from entering a home. Do we have any rights if they show up at my classroom or if they show up on our campus? What are the rights? And then secondly, are there forms of resistance that are more, that result in fewer consequences versus others? What can we do and what risks can we take there?
My first recommendation is to try to close the doors if possible. So it's important to have maybe a meeting with administration about this and kind of the way, how many doors do we have? What is their accessibility in case of an emergency? And obviously you don't want to shut everything so in case there's a fire or something, they can't get out. You need to have all these conversations. But if you're able to have the doors closed, that would be ideal because they're not going to be able to get in. And it's the same thing as in a house. Why are you here? Do you have a warrant? And then review that warrant for the name, for the address, and for that it's correctly signed. And if they have that, then we have to let them in. But it should be specific to a person, or if it's a warrant to search, then that's different. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
And then can Christian talk to the best form of protesting or I guess advocating?
Mike just asked me what would be some examples of the police or law enforcement trying to gain consent. So it's very simple. Can we come in? Can we talk to you? I would say no. I mean, no matter how nice they are, even though they're not typically nice, can we speak to you about someone? No. I mean, so it's important to respectfully stand your ground and say no. I know sometimes when we're up against an authority, we want to say yes, but just respectfully say no because the consent will be, can we talk to you? Can we see this? Can we search that? And it's going to be no. And sometimes they're going to keep asking. They're going to keep asking, so it's important to just to continue to say no.
So you said no, but I need to talk to you because that's breaking the law.
No.
Or sir, if you don't let me in, then that is grounds for your arrest.
Do you have a warrant?
I do have a warrant, yes, so please let me in now.
Let me see the warrant.
No, I don't need to show you the warrant. I have a warrant. I'm a police officer. You need to believe me and let me in right now.
The answer is still no.
Oh, come on, all right. Get him a police officer outfit. He was good. You made me nervous. But see, that's perfect. Okay, I have 2 questions here and then I'll go back over there.
It was good. In our community here in Lincoln Heights, we have a lot of people that childcare is very expensive, so they'll have either a tia, a comadre, a neighbor, watch their children. So it's not uncommon for somebody to watch 5, 6 kids, anywhere from toddlers to, especially if it's summertime, the kids are running around. So I had a lady ask me, I'm here with the Sacred Heart Church. What do we do if we're outside with the kids and the kids are running around and somebody wants to come to our home, and even though the adult would have probably said, no, don't come in. You know, children, they see somebody dressed up in what looks like a police officer uniform, and we're teaching our children to respect authority. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but what happens if that scenario, they come in and everybody's so concerned, yes, they might take the adult, but what happens to the kids that are in that home that aren't necessarily sons or daughters of the
I'm not a family attorney, but usually they have a plan. I don't know necessarily what it is. I know it varies. So usually they leave them with the closest United States citizen or lawful permanent resident adult. If not, they can call services, essentially. So we do have to be careful. Yeah, so again, my recommendation is having a plan if that happens. And that's also why I wanted to have kids in the meetings. They have to learn not to open the door because kids love to see their family members. They run out and they open it. We have to be really careful with that consent. Even if it's slightly open, that is enough for an ICE officer to come in.
And under the law, you have to be 18 to give valid consent to enter the home.
That part.
Okay?
That
I mean, we're not trusting that police officers care about that, or law enforcement, these guys care about that. But if that were to be challenged later on, if a child's allowing, you know, somebody into the home, and somebody is arrested or something is found, like that was illegal consent. That was not a consent to search the premises. No, I mean, these guys are just, they're not following laws, right? So again, it is important, like Delia stated, like to all the kids, like, no dejan a nadie entrar, I don't care who they are, I don't care if they have a badge, like everybody's a stranger, like nobody's allowed to come in. Don't open the door, and I'm only allowed to open the door. Okay,
and even telling them not to talk to anyone that comes to the door. And this goes to Delia's part about having the family meeting. You tell the kids under 18, stay silent, don't talk. They're gonna sound really nice. Don't talk to them, period.
Yeah, but then you could just, I guess, tell them, yeah, don't talk to strangers. I don't care what they're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm piggybacking off of that question. Since there is news about different departments also joining immigration and homeland security, I'm just wondering, since they don't know the protocols to follow that ICE should be following, but clearly isn't in some cases, what are the steps we can take to defend against those departments, since they are not Homeland Security or ICE, depending on what state they're actually going to? Because we don't know California right now, with Huntington Beach admitting to just allowing ICE to go in and detain people. What security do we really have that other departments won't join, and that we won't be able to safely defend ourselves against those departments because they're not following the same laws or protocols that ICE does?
So I'm gonna give a little brief answer and then I'll pass the mic. Technically, ICE and Border Patrol, when you're at the border within 100 miles, you pretty much have no rights. They can search you. After that, after those 100 miles, even ICE, Border Patrol, they have to follow the same protocols as local law enforcement. Why? Because our rights remain the same after 100 miles past the border. So as we had stated before, we cannot stop them from doing illegal things. Like, they're gonna be doing the illegal things. And my advice would be all these preventative measures, not talking, not having somebody film an illegal arrest, not signing anything. Those are to preserve your rights for after the fact, because in my opinion, I mean, there's nothing we can do or say to if they're gonna do something illegal, they're gonna do something illegal.
I'm I'm glad you brought that point, because one thing is the law and the other thing is how they're going to be using it, right? And we know that they have been breaking the law. I've been working with ICE for over 18 years and I have heard horror stories. I mean, 3 of my clients called me once they were in Tijuana, beaten up by ICE officers. That's how bad it can get, unfortunately. Not all of them, but definitely that was one result of a few women. But also the most common are the lies and the coercion. So whether they're following the law or whether they don't even know what they're doing for these new officers, unfortunately, we just have to essentially document everything as much as possible. And that's where the allies come in. That's where filming safely in a way comes in, and actually playing, going through with helping these people. Yeah, so definitely.
Okay, sorry, this.
Yeah, because I do criminal defense, but I just wanted to give a heads up for, especially like someone said they're in Santa Ana, in Orange County, when you're getting arraigned, like so you can have a misdemeanor. A lot of the times, the judges and the DAs will directly interact with the defendant themselves. They will ask you, do you want a public defender or do you want to defend yourself? So at that point, you're in limbo, like, you know, I've seen it where they've taken pleas and I'm hearing the Spanish interpreter not interpreting properly, and that person's pleading to a second time DUI, which is going to negatively affect their criminal case. So my feedback is, I mean, because usually this is, you got stopped for DUI, you got stopped, and said, okay, your court date's 5 months down. I would say whenever you get those notices, tell any of your family members, before you go to court, call the public defender's office. Say, hey, I have this case set for this date, and be honest, say, I am not documented. Because what I've noticed is the public defenders, they're not gonna ask you, are you undocumented? That's the first thing I would ask, because where I used to practice, 99% of my clients were Spanish, Hispanic males, and 80% Hispanic speakers. And I already knew if it's gonna be second time DUI, I need to ask that first question. But so my long story short, I would say always let the public defenders, before you go to court, because what happens if you come to court, you're doing arraignment, ICE could pick you up right there. You don't even know. You could just be picked up. They could be running records of the whole arraignment. Oh, that person arraigned, they could just run the records. They pick you up even before you have a chance to talk to your public defender. So, I'm sorry. So I would say that just call first and let them know, because once public defenders know, they will reach out to an immigration attorney. They're obligated to.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is, so I'm coming from Pasadena, where a lot of our immigrant community in Altadena lost everything, you know, their homes, their everything that belongs to them. Is there anything that helps their immigration status that they could do?
If there's anything that
will help their immigration status, or?
Because of the fires?
Yes, that they lost everything?
Unfortunately, no, there is no relief that can assist in that regard.
Okay.
No.
And the other question is, I know the vacant was the drug charges. Is there anything for immigrants that had a DUI that's in a long period of time?
He's nodding his head. Yes, it's the same thing. It's not just, I was using the simple drug possession as an example, but it can be literally any charge. I vacated a sex offense charge, right? I mean, of course, the prosecutors are going to re-prosecute, that person's going to fight their case, but you can bring these petitions to vacate on any conviction. Of course, always check with an immigration attorney that you need to do it, because you might not need to spend the time or the money vacating it.
So ideally, we want everybody to be squeaky clean, right? So as an immigration lawyer, I would say get everything vacated, but you really have to think realistically in terms of the economics of it and everything. And what I look at is the possibility of obtaining a green card, some type of stability. So it's really going to depend what convictions you have, and we look at the penal code section, and we look if it's inadmissible or blah, blah, blah. Just a legal analysis on whether that's necessary. So for certain relief, I don't need you to vacate a DUI, especially if it happened a long time ago. But right now, with what's happening, an undocumented person with a DUI may be a problem. So it depends on the why behind why we're doing it. If we're doing it now to protect ourselves from ICE, then I would say do it.
Great, thank you.
My question comes from if somebody's already taken by ICE, what role does public interest, gaining media attention play? Does it help their case? Does it, a lot of people stay quiet while they're processing, but if it's done illegally, if there's misconduct happening from ICE, and getting media attention may help the case. Is that something that a lot of people don't know about, that may help their case, or should they be quiet in the background, especially if it's done illegally?
That's a good question. I'm thinking about my client, whether or not I would want the media involved if he's in the midst of getting detained. Would it make his situation worse, or would it help him? I guess it depends. I mean, I don't think it'll help him or her in that particular situation. If media is involved, what are you going to do, really, if you're not there to advocate like a lawyer? But it may help that the community learns about it. So whose interest are we looking at? So it's a good question. I think I need to think about it a little bit more, because I need to think about my client if I was their lawyer.
And I only say that because that happened to my dad. My dad's case went global in 2018 in the first administration when Trump came in. He was taken during the raids. But his case got expedited because the media gained attention, because I went to the media. And the judge dismissed it due to public interest because it was done illegally. He was a green card holder. He did have a misdemeanor from 20 years ago, but the way he was apprehended was completely illegal. So it did gain knowledge. Now, it did put us in a bit of a danger because we were going out, but the community rose up and it gained public interest.
I think it would depend on a case by case. The fact that your father was a lawful permanent resident is very different than if he was undocumented. An undocumented person is extremely vulnerable. So I would be very careful in that regard.
Right, next.
Hi everyone. Okay, so we all know everybody's fear mongering on social media, and there's like this email going around, well, a few emails of attorneys sharing it with their clients that on February 23rd they'll be conducting like ICE raids. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Like they're going to people's homes and workplaces. So I just wanted to see, have you guys heard of anything of that? Because I said I thought it was fear mongering, and it seemed like it was just going around to scare people.
I think the point is, let's just assume they're going to come anytime, not just any day. So assume it could be possible any day, which is why we're arming you with information now, because it maybe won't happen, but it could happen any day. So yeah, the 23rd, the 18th, the 16th, doesn't matter. But again, fear mongering, be mindful of that. Questions? I know there were some hands right here. Yes.
Given that there's a blatant violation of rights happening, if somebody is an EAD card holder and they're having, they're in an immigration process with USCIS, how safe is that person?
So an employment authorization document is usually issued when you have some type of immigration application pending with either the court or with USCIS, which is the administrative branch of immigration. So it's going to depend what type of application you have. But for the most part, it's a very important factor that ICE will consider to prevent a deportation or to give the person an opportunity. So it's definitely something positive. I'm telling my clients to keep, well, before the Trump administration, I would tell them, always have a copy of your documentation or receipts. I would tell them not to carry the original because it's just so expensive to replace and it takes forever. But now with everything that's happening, I'm just take the original. But yes, it doesn't necessarily in all cases prevent a removal, but it's definitely a factor that will help.
And that's a good point, Delia. As far as the family meeting again, having documents ready, make copies. Take photos of it, save it in your photo album on your phone even. I mean, it's better than nothing at this point, and make sure everyone in the family has that copy. All right.
Testing. Okay. I'm going to help get some of the questions. Oh, sorry.
I have a question about the workplace. I manage small hotels, and we're trying to make a plan on how to best assess our employees in case that ICE shows up. the hotels do not have, we cannot close doors, they're open entry. But I'm also concerned about guests that could be walking in common areas. So in that scenario, what can I do? And can my employees lock themselves in a room?
I mean, hotels are private property, so you can't refuse them entry. I understand that your doors have to remain open because, you know, guests are coming in and out. But as the manager, you are allowed, if you see them coming, to refuse entry. Again, it's the same, you know, thing that we're talking about, a home. This is private property. You can refuse entry, of course, and then you do the whole song and dance with if you have a warrant. Like, I'm not gonna talk to you, but I'll read a document. You have one for me? You know? So yes, they can lock themselves in a room. Like if you have some form of sending out a mass text or something and say, hey, they're here, like, go into a room now. I mean, you have the right to refuse entry, and they don't have to open the doors either. You could leave them standing there for however long they want to wait, but you don't have to let them in.
Thank you. Question at the top.
Testing, okay. I know it's a big stage, so don't want to ignore the questions up here.
Thank you. I'm a notary public in the Valley, and I've gotten questions of what documentation we can have ready, printed, to provide to families. They want something notarized, and is that sufficient enough if they get removed for their kids to be taken care of?
I don't think any of us are family law lawyers, but I would recommend to go visit. If you have children and you're undocumented and you're afraid that you may be detained, I would definitely go visit a family law lawyer so they can talk to you about the options.
Okay, another question?
Hi, my name is Cece.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Hello? So both my parents are undocumented, and they have other kids. Both of them are 10 and 15. Should they be taken? Where would I find them? How would I find them? And would I be able to take them my own siblings, or does the ICE take them with my parents?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question?
If my parents were to be taken by ICE, do they take the children as well? And if so, like, how would I find them, and how would I pick them up?
I've heard that they've done a lot of different things. One of them is leave them with the nearest adult, a neighbor. They have called child services sometimes if there's absolutely no adult. After that, I don't know, because I focus obviously on the representation of the person that's being detained. So I definitely can look into it. You can follow us, Franco Law Group, and it's a great question. So
Great question, and actually, I think we'll make sure everyone has everyone's information up here. But do follow us, because I know all of you are advocates and you're posting stuff like that, but that's an excellent question. Christian.
Yeah, so you could have that authorized caregiver form posted somewhere in the home. If it's something that is a realistic threat to your family unit, that authorized caregiver form, have it posted maybe on the fridge or somewhere in the home, and then make sure that whoever may be subject to detention by ICE, that they are aware of the form, and in the process of being detained, they let the law enforcement officials know.
Okay, question over here. Wait, right over here, come up here.
Hi, Kelly is my wife. I came to see her. But I did have a question. So right down the street is LA General Hospital. I am the chief of infectious disease there, and about 80% of our patients are managed Medi-Cal, many undocumented. Can ICE come into hospitals?
Yes.
Unfortunately, it wasn't the case. We had safe places that we could rely on, and now they can come in, unfortunately. So my recommendation is very similar to what we've been talking about in terms of hotels, in terms of just private property, your own home. Try to keep the doors closed as much as possible, and then you can essentially let them know that you are not going to be answering any questions, but ask them whether or not they have a warrant. And if not, ask them to leave.
Okay. Testing. Ophelia.
Hi. I was wondering.
Just speak loud, we can hear you.
Okay, I was just wondering if you guys would be willing to consolidate the original talking points, like the Victor and Victoria scenario of what everybody can be doing, into a PDF that we can have like access to on a website, so we can spread this information far and wide for people who aren't here today, and it's like actionable bullet points.
That's going to be, thank you for asking that, but when you exit, again, we've created the Equity and Justice Alliance. On there, it's a QR code, scan it. It's going to take you to a website. There will be a link for lawyers who want to be allies and help answer similar questions to sign up, lawyers only. And then there's another link that's going to be for people that may be looking for lawyers to sign up. And then we're adding a resource page. There'll be another link. And this is why we're recording this, because we're going to pull from this and we're going to make bullet point information. So thank you.
And we're gonna
Yeah.
add a reach out to.
Oh, and we're going to name everyone up here, so you'll have our contact as well.
And reach out to family lawyers.
I know, family law. That's, well, Flor just agreed we're going to do another one of these. Yes. Come on. Should we do another one? Yes. All right. Okay, so we are, and thank you, family law. Duh, I didn't think about that. Go
Okay,
ahead.
question.
Hola, buenas tardes. I have two questions, very small. I, as a college student right now, I did talk to Gina a little bit about going into law as well. I want to study this as my profession. My question is, right now, as a protester, as an advocate, being a birthright citizen, if I were to go to a protest, what way can I be ready if they do detain me? Not for immigration purposes, I mean under arrest, because they are doing that and they're trying to silence us. But I want to know my rights so that if they do, and I was peacefully protesting, like for example, yesterday in my hometown in San Diego, there was a fight that occurred and they started to pepper spray people. So I want to know what I can do in order to be prepared for that, because I do it often, so I just want to make sure that I'm safe.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So it's some of the points that we mentioned earlier about making sure that you're in a position where you're not subject to criminal charges. Whatever in your phone, you have to be careful of what's in your phone. I mean, if you're gonna go up to a protest, I would probably remove Face ID. Because if they get your phone, they could just open it by putting it in your face. Whereas if you have a passcode, they're not gonna open it. Yeah, well, yeah, if you have one of those phones. Anything where they could open it without a code, I would remove that, because then they could go through your phone. You probably don't have anything incriminating, but at the same time, you don't want to give them any opportunity to try to find something incriminating. And so I have cases right now, wrongful incarceration cases, where they've suppressed evidence, they've manufactured evidence, and they've done things to really go after folks. And so it's very important that you don't give them any type of evidence. But again, back to my main point, you have to make sure that you avoid any violence whatsoever, any antagonism which could really lead to these situations. And I hate to say it, but extract yourself from a situation that you know is escalating. I know you're with your fellow comrades and your friends and folks that you're part of the unit, but if they're antagonizing and they're causing the situation to escalate, I would extract myself from that situation, because not only will you be subject to arrest, then they're building a case against you because they've seen you at a previous protest, and then now they're seeing you at another one. And in that protest there was violence, and then now in this one there's violence. So they may be building a case against you, but if you extract yourself, or at least you try to stop it and say, look, whoever this is who's antagonizing, stop it, then at least you're documenting and you have a track record of saying, look, no, I actually tried to stop this, and there were these bad actors. Because also from the George Floyd movement, which I have a lot of cases still from there are infiltrators. There are folks from the government purposely going into these groups. Maybe there's someone in here, hopefully not, but that are infiltrating these groups to antagonize and escalate. And so it's very, very important that you stop it and you go to the root cause of these type of issues to protect yourself and protect your community.
All right, thank you. I have a question here.
Oh, can I just add to the last one? So this is all stuff that you can do to not get arrested. Again, as we know, they don't follow the law. So if you are arrested, the same thing, you'll always be told, don't talk to them, don't talk to them, you're already arrested. So just wait, you'll either probably be cited out depending on how crowded that jail is that they take you to, or you get to see a judge within 2 court days, so court days, right? And at that point, and just like he said, when we were having the Black Lives Matter protests, the public defender's office in downtown LA County, everybody was already, all the public defenders were like ready to take these cases. A lot of these cases were dismissed, right? So just because you're arrested doesn't mean that you're gonna be convicted of anything. So if you're arrested, do not talk, because they're gonna, again, they're trained to try to get incriminating things out of you. And you just think you're trying to explain the situation, don't. They're not taking your explanation. Do not talk, wait till you speak to your lawyer. And in most of these cases where they're just arbitrarily arresting protesters to intimidate them, a lot of them were getting dismissed once they were getting to court.
Should I go?
So I know that there's a couple of states, Mississippi and Missouri, where they're introducing bounty hunter programs, $1,000 immigrant bounty hunter programs. And so I am seeing in real time in states such as Mississippi where they're doing checkpoints, stopping traffic. So I think this question is for the immigration lawyer with regard to what can a BP agent do? Do they have the authority to ask for a driver's license registration? Do they have the ability to run our plates? And what's the difference as a United States citizen? You know, if I don't need to give them my driver's license and registration, I don't want to, and I won't.
So whether an ICE officer stops you?
BP, Border Patrol.
Oh, it's essentially the same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing, an ICE officer and a CBP officer, all the same advice.
Hi, I'm a teacher, and I know all about closing the doors and all that, but you know, in Texas, you had a teacher who just called ICE on her own students, and which is reprehensible, is disgusting. As a teacher, I can't even imagine. And sometimes you have an administration that doesn't back you. And what do I do if they come? What can I do to protect my kids? If they come into my classroom, short of getting arrested myself, because that's probably going to happen, let's face it. And I also have a follow-up question of, can they falsify warrants? And if they do, what are the legal actions I can take to come after them for falsifying such a warrant? Thank you.
Unfortunately, as we've discussed, ICE does have the authority to lie, to coerce, and I've heard it all. I've had women that have been deported, clients of mine that call me after the fact and tell me, they told me they were gonna take my children away. They told me that I was going to be detained 5-10 years if I didn't sign. So I think part of the training and part of our advocacy as allies is knowing that. There's case law that allows them to lie. So if once you have that information, what they're telling you has a different value, right? So I think it's important for our communities to know that they will lie and they will do things that they shouldn't be doing, especially, again, I've been dealing with ICE for a long time, and the lack, I don't know if it's the lack of training or just their behavior is just, it's horrific. But yes.
So I have a question, is in addition to saying no, what benefit is it to say I exercise my right to have an attorney. And then we're trying to get y'all an attorney. But what, when somebody says, no, I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment right and I have an attorney, how does that change?
So, law enforcement banks on the fact that you don't know your rights, okay? And that's why, and again, we can't stop them from doing illegal things, but when somebody does say that and start saying, these are, you know, just reciting, I'm exercising my right to remain silent, I'm requesting an attorney, it gives them the clue of like, oh shit, like this person knows their rights and they probably have a lawyer and they might come after me or whatever, right? So I do think it kind of makes them back off a little, right? I mean, I'm a criminal defense attorney and I'll get stopped for a traffic stop, and if they find out and sometimes I don't want to tell them I'm a defense attorney because I'm like, oh, they're going to write me a really expensive ticket. But what they do is they're like, oh, okay, well, just a warning. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I think when they see that you're kind of empowered by knowing your rights, they kind of take a beat. And that helps.
At check-in, we have these cards, these red cards, I'm sure you've all seen it, there they are, English and Spanish, and it says this. So people that don't speak Spanish, you can put it up against the window, and it says, I exercise my right to be, in English, I exercise my right for silence, I want to speak to an attorney. Now, can they lie and say, I want to talk to my attorney, but they don't have an attorney in that moment? Can they lie and say that?
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Saying, I'm just asking.
Why are we not allowed to lie? They're lying to us. I have an attorney, like, I'm not gonna answer any questions until I have my attorney.
Boom.
And our card. The card, does it have our, it has our firm on it. So, not that we're giving free legal advice to all the other card, but it is legit and you hold it up. And those are trigger words, just like I'm taking your kids. I have an attorney and I want an attorney is a trigger word, especially if they're inexperienced police officers.
What's your name? What's your badge number? Because I'm gonna need it for the lawsuit.
Okay, we have a question here.
Sorry, I actually have two. One about protesting. Would you suggest just not carrying your phone at all? And if you don't carry your phone and you are arrested, what are the chances that they will give you a chance to get a call right off the get? Or are you gonna have to wait a period of 24 to 48 hours to be able to get a call? That's one of the questions. I'm so sorry. And then the second one is about the bounty hunting. What would you say would be our legal standing, our legal rights if they decide to cross like state lines and then overstep? Because apparently now Trump is, you know, pardoning patriots. And, you know, what rights do we have to stand when it comes to defending ourselves if they do get empowered and decide to overstep their little, you know, borders at this point? Because only certain states are allowing these things, but the way that they're running these little ordeals is kind of, you know, it's troublesome. So I'm just wondering what we can do to defend ourselves if they do decide to come. Do we have the right for citizen's arrest? Can we do stand our ground kind of thing, even though we're here in California? To what extent can we defend ourselves when it comes to defending ourselves?
That's a good point regarding the cell phone. I would probably leave it at home because that's just an additional type of evidence that they could try to use against you. Sometimes if they seize your phone, you won't even get it back because it's subject to evidence in the case that's ongoing for whatever time it is. Under the law, you are entitled to phone calls. It's in the government code, and it's also in the policies of many of these jails. And so they are required to give you opportunities to make phone calls. So that's a good tip. In terms of the bounty hunters, so you're saying them coming into the state?
Yeah, pretty much, because they're getting emboldened at this point. So, you know, if our president is encouraging them as insurrectionists that they're pardoned, that kind of gave to be honest, we already know that human beings are capable of a lot of evil. So what makes us think that they're not going to overstep? So I'm just wondering what could be a nice ground of defense for us if they do decide to overstep.
Well, you're gonna have to be careful, because a lot of these folks are Second Amendment folks too. And so you don't want to get into a situation which leads to them using a firearm against you as well. I think in that situation, it would be best just to call law enforcement, because it's unlawful. Just because it's lawful in one state doesn't mean it's lawful in this state. So the best thing in that situation to do would be to call law enforcement, just document, but I necessarily wouldn't try to get involved with them, because they already think they're above the law. So someone getting in their way is just, they might lash out.
I mean, because we are in California, you still have the right to self-defense. If this is a private person trying to come in and kidnap you or your children or a loved one, like, self-defense still stands here. California law will not recognize them as a law enforcement officer.
Okay, we have about 5 more minutes. This is a 2-part event. So is there someone that's been raising their hand for a really long time? I know the people around you have probably been like just staring at them.
Well, we're going to do
Over here.
this again. So Ophelia's going to pick someone. This will be our last question, because there is part 2. But listen, you're all going to come back. It's fine. We're all friends now. So we're all going to come back. Super Bowl Sunday, shall we? Oh, I know. Don't get mad. We'll play it behind us on mute. Right? Because we're all looking at our phones anyways when we're watching it.
Just surprised she knew that it was next week.
I don't know anything about sports. Surprise. Here you go.
Hi, how you guys doing? First of all, can you expand on the Lincoln Write-In Act? And second of all, can you give a scenario of what ICE can lie about when they are near you and questions? Like, what can they lie about? What can they say to you? For people that don't know and stuff like that. Just if a little scenario like you did earlier, if there's a scenario that you guys know that ICE usually brings and usually says to people, what would that be? And also, can you expand on the Lincoln Write-In Act that just passed?
Okay, so I'll start with the second one. Actually, let's start with the first. Okay, so the Lincoln Riley Act. This was, it stemmed from a nurse that was murdered in Georgia by a Venezuelan undocumented immigrant. And it is something that a lot of people think is a good law, which in my opinion it completely isn't, for several reasons. And what it does is it allows certain crimes, and you only have to be arrested. So they're theft and violent crimes, and they're delineated. You can look those up. But what makes it a very dangerous type of law is that it allows people that are simply suspects to be deported from the United States for these particular crimes. So this is outrageous. I have so many clients in my office that have been unfairly charged, and then once they figure it out, then the charges are dropped. So this law can be used as a way to go after immigrants, pretending that they might be guilty of theft. Some theft is non-violent. It can be shoplifting as well. Okay, so this is one part that's dangerous. The second one is that the the state governments can sue the federal government if they're not enforcing laws correctly, immigration laws, or protecting the country. It's unheard of, it's ridiculous. So it's definitely a very scary type of law. And what was the other question? I got too into the...
What can ICE do?
Oh, they can definitely lie. So they can lie about everything and anything. I can't even tell you what's the most common thing they say, because they have come up with everything along the lines. But they will lie about, you will be detained this amount of time. We will beat you up. Or they beat up one person in this particular confinement room, and then the others are looking, and they'll say, if you don't sign this document, I'm going to take your children, you're going to be detained for a really long time. So the whole gamut, they're able to lie under the law.
All right, one more. Right here.
Stay.
I know, guys, sorry. We've got to cut it off at some point.
I don't think we've had almost anybody here, so let me just.
Thank you so much. So, real quick, I grew up, a lot of us did, with, movies and popular culture that say, somebody says, La Migra, and everybody starts running. And I recently heard in an info session, and I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly, that we shouldn't run, because running gives agents and law enforcement probable cause.
Absolutely.
But that if they come to a workplace or they come to a store, to just remain calm, follow the right to remain silent, and most of the time they don't have that search warrant, they don't have something against you. But is that what we, literally everything that we've learned in movies, la migra y córrele, we need to tell our people, no corran, just remain calm. Is that so? Yes, definitely do not run. Because if you do, that's exactly it. You're giving them a reason to stop you. We need to be really careful. And I'm glad you brought this up because there's some influencers in the room. And part of this administration is, again, fear-mongering. They want to create this terror. So we don't want to contribute to that. And how do we do that? For example, if you're seeing an ICE truck that's in front of the ICE offices, don't make it seem like there's an ICE right there, because there isn't. Verify. Please verify that in fact this is happening. Because if not, we're just contributing to more and more fear in our communities. If you want to publicize it, have the community's best interest in mind. If you're going to do it, you're doing it to protect them. Okay, there is 3-4 ICE trucks in, I don't know, I think they were at Rowan and Townsend in East Los Angeles. Protect yourself. You're looking out for the community. But if you just want to publicize it for the hell of publicizing it, please don't do that, because we don't want to help this administration. We're already really scared.
Okay.
And just really quick to add to that, many of you have probably already heard this. I saw this, the Juntos Seguros, where people you can report a sighting, and they have maps of where ICE is being seen, and they have them color-coded within the last 24 hours or 48 hours. So that's a good resource for people to report the sightings of them, and also for other people if they're trying to travel to an area that they could look it up.
Done. Okay. I know. Don't get mad. I know. We wish this could go on, but I want to respect everyone's time. Okay, then come down. Ben.
There are many allies that are natural life citizens, LPRs, and that are afraid to say how, and I love her question that she said, we're trying to protect her coming into a private area, and we're telling them, go ahead and hide, right? We have a chat of the employees that are on document, and we are saying, go ahead and hide, they are here. Does immigration, do they have arresting powers? Because even if they don't have a search warrant, but they're now, we aiding and abetting and saying, hey, if there is no search warrant, and as the naturalized or the legal permanent resident is trying to be an ally, could they get in trouble for saying something like that?
Great question.
I mean, I keep repeating the same thing. Can they arrest you? Yeah, because they physically can, not because they legally can. So, and you wouldn't, that's not aiding and abetting you protecting your rights and your constitutional rights, and you exercising those rights is not aiding and abetting whatever, law enforcement or whatever. So, I mean, I would say, again, it does take courage to exercise your rights in the face of law enforcement who are doing illegal things, telling you lies, and trying to intimidate you. And can they detain you to intimidate you? Yes, they are doing that. But it's not legal, right? And then you shouldn't be able to be legally deported if you're a resident just because you were exercising your right.
Here's what I'd recommend, and it goes to the hotel question as well. When you figure out what you want to tell people, I would not say by text, ICE is here, run and hide. I would say, ICE is here, remember your constitutional rights. And everybody should be clear as to what that means.
And
Just a quick, to answer your question, the law in terms of aiding and abetting is developing. Stay tuned and we'll see, and hopefully we don't move towards where we don't want to move. But even today, Gina and I were talking about, are we eventually going to be aiding and abetting by having these?
Yeah.
Well, we want to help our community and we'll do everything in our power meanwhile. But stay tuned and we'll tell you otherwise.
Okay, so just because she's a Latina lawyer, I'm going to let her have the last question.
It's actually a comment following up on what Christian Contreras said earlier with regards to that caregiver affidavit. It's Family Code Section 6550. It doesn't have to be signed in advance by the parent. So if the parent was to be taken all of a sudden and deported and the child is now left, with no care, the caregiver can take the child, sign the affidavit, turn it into the school, they can make, medical decisions, and, that's all they need. But I think what I would do also is, there's a form, the guardianship form, the GC, it's a judicial council form, the GC 211. As the parent, I would sign that in advance, nominating a guardian, checking the box where I don't need to be given any notice, and this is who I nominate. So don't date it, just give it to the person you've nominated so that, if this were to happen, the person can go get a guardianship so they can have more, say-so over the child. Because the caregiver affidavit is limited to certain family members, and it's listed there in the code. It's very straightforward. And it's limited into, enroll them at school and certain medical decisions, and that's it. But the other form, the guardianship gives them more rights.
Thank you.
All right, that's Martha Dada. Incredible lawyer. All right, so this concludes the legal portion of today's conversation, but stay tuned, truly. I think we're going to look at dates to do this again, because this is important, and we will do stuff. I'm going to make sure everyone, you can reach out to them, go to our posts on Instagram, both in Celebration Nation and mine, and you will get everyone's information. It's already up there. And thank you for being advocates, for being allies, yes, and the QR code is outside when you walk out. The Equity and Justice Alliance we've created, and the red cards, and everything's out there, so don't leave without it. Stay tuned, much more to come. Again, this is a marathon, not a race. Everyone, don't forget your breaths. And we're in this together, so let's take a photo. Thank you.
I'm going to leave my business cards here. If anybody wants one, come get.
One more round of applause for the lawyers today, please.
That was amazing. We see that the need and the demand is here.
Most of them are going to stick around too. So right now we're going to have a quick presentation with slides that you're able to record and take pictures of so you can share with family and friends. But I think maybe even after, maybe a couple of them could stay and answer a little bit more questions. Yes, sounds good. But yes, we want to take a picture if that's okay with you guys.
We're going to take your both sides, one over here and then that way.
Thank you.
So right now we're just going to move things on the stage. We're going to get rid of the